faculty development program on remote sensing and GIS. Yesterday we have very nice sessions, and today this lecture is also will be very interesting. Before session starts, I request my student volunteer, Miss Samira, please introduce Dr. Durga Rao to the participants today.
Yes, sir. Am I audible, sir?
Yeah, you are audible. Please go ahead.
Good morning, one and all. It's an honor for me to introduce our distinguished guest, Dr. K.H.V. Durga Rao Garu, Group Head of Disaster Management Support Group, RSA, National Remote Sensing Center, ISRO, Hyderabad. Dr. K.H.V. Durga Rao Garu have been working with NRSC ISRO for the last 25 years in various capacities. He graduated in civil engineering from Andhra University, done his master's in water resource engineering from IIT Kharagpur, and PhD on SDSS for water resource management. Dr. K.H.V. Durga Rao Garu is entangled with various reputed institutions like Indian Water Resource Society, Indian Association of Hydrologists, and a honorable member at UN Working Group on Disaster Management. He was awarded 4 times by ISRO Team Excellence Awards for the contributions in various national level projects. Dr. K.H.V. Durga Rao Garu published about 30 research papers in various international and national journals. He is responsible for space-based disaster management support activities in the country for floods and cyclones in all 3 phases of disasters. He successfully executed various national level operational and R&D projects in the field of remote sensing and GIS applications to water resources and hydrology. His area of research includes disaster risk reduction, hydrological modeling, flood forecasting, water resources assessment, and etc. It is a great opportunity for all of us to learn from you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Samira. Thank you, sir, Durga Rao sir, for accepting our invitation. Now, please hand out the session, sir, and proceed.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Samira and Professor Srinivasa Garu for giving me this opportunity. Hope you are seeing my presentation.
Not yet, sir. Please.
Not seen?
No. Yeah, now it's okay.
Okay.
Okay, sir.
So, good morning to everyone. Today, I would like to discuss about role of space technology in disaster risk reduction during all phases of disasters, in specific to floods and cyclones. You know that disaster management support program is established by Indian Space Research Organization sometime back, maybe 2 decades back. Okay, so ISRO has established a decision support center, we call it DSC, at National Remote Sensing Center under Disaster Management Support Program as a single delivery point for space and aerial-based inputs to disaster management in the country. So here we address all natural disasters in near real time using space-based inputs for disaster risk reduction in the country. We work on floods, cyclones, storm surge inundation simulations, forest fires, earthquakes, landslides, aerial services, and we have another center called NDM, National Database for Emergency Management. So you have another lecture followed by presentation on this. So what are the major activities of DSC at NRSC? As I mentioned, we work on all phases of disasters in real time, in near real time. We monitor and map all the floods due to riverine floods and cyclonic floods and disseminate to the users. And we prepare flood hazard maps having the repository of historic satellite data. We prepare flood hazard atlas for major flood-prone states, and we give it to the state users. And provide disaster-specific multi-scale database through National Database for Emergency Management, as I mentioned. We generate high-resolution digital terrain models using aerial platforms through ALTM sensors. Working on special flood early warning, capacity building to stakeholders. We provide inputs to the major organizations like MHA, Minister of Home Affairs, NDMA, National Disaster Management Authority, Central Water Commission, State Disaster Management Authorities, and other stakeholders. And we have international cooperation through international charter and Central Asia. Lot of disturbance is there. Can somebody close the? Please mute the audio. Hello. Can you please mute the audio?
Yeah, now it's okay, sir. You can continue.
Okay. So, first I would like to discuss about the response phase, where satellite remote sensing has immense role to play. Okay. So, to map floods and cyclones continuously, we need a constellation of satellites. We have to process the data from different multiple satellites and sensors. Okay. So, like we have some communication satellites which can be used during disasters for communication purpose, and we have Earth observation satellites which images the Earth on regular basis. It is varying from very coarse resolution to high resolution. We have optical remote sensing, we have microwave remote sensing, and different swaths and different temporal resolutions, so that to map floods continuously, we have to depend upon so many satellites. So we have geostationary satellites, we have sun synchronous satellites like ResourceSat 2A, Cartosat, Resat, OceanSat, recent Carto 3, and other satellites. And apart from this Indian satellites, we depend on foreign data sets also, like Sentinel-1 and 2, which is freely available, MODIS data, Landsat data, and sometimes we procure RadarSat-2 also, which is very expensive because we have to monitor the floods continuously. If IRS data, Sentinel data is not available, we have to procure the RadarSat data also. And during major disasters, particularly, we activate international charter to get satellite data from multi-space missions across the globe, like ELOS data, TERRAS or X data, Circum, Pleiades, Worldview, Canopus, RCM, etc. So we receive data from, particularly if I talk about this year, we received satellite data from 14 satellite missions from different countries. And we have aerial platforms, like in case of very critical emergencies, like tsunamis, okay, very severe cyclones, super cyclones. So we fly using aerial platforms also. We acquire data, high resolution data for damage assessment particularly. And we have in situ observations like automatic weather stations, which MOSDAC is at SAC, Ahmedabad is working. They collect meteorological data, and they provide rainfall data and other meteorological data, rainfall grids, rainfall forecast grids, everything to the user organizations. These are the space and ground assets for disaster risk reduction in the country. Coming to the response phase, what is the complete chain of actions we do? Okay. We know that monsoon starts generally sometime June, mid of June, and it goes up to October also. And we have cyclones period sometimes in May, sometimes in November, December, even sometimes in January also. Okay, so like that, almost 8 years we have either floods, and 8 months we have either floods and cyclones. Okay, so before the start of flood season or cyclone season, we prepare a pre-flood database. Means what is the river courses, what are the water body status, and everything, because that pre-flood mask we have to subtract from the flood map to give the exact flood inundation. And once we then we continuously monitor different newspapers, print media, visual media, and we continuously monitor Central Water Commission websites, IMD sites to monitor the cyclones, and satellite-based rainfall products also we continuously monitor to know that rainfall, what will be the next 5 days rainfall, and so where there will be a possibility of flood and etc. Once we foresee any flood, then immediately we acquire the satellite data. First, we will look into the Indian remote sensing satellite data, and in absence of that, we will go for other satellite data free sources like Sentinel, MODIS, etc. If that is also not available, then we'll procure Radarsat data. And as I mentioned, in case of if the emergency, in critical emergencies, we activate international charter also. And once we get the satellite data, we analyze it. Now we have two types of satellite data sets. One is cloud optical data, and another is micro data. So micro data, which is a cloud free data, because during floods you will have a lot of clouds. Sometimes you will have full of clouds. You cannot see anything. So we need a micro data which can penetrate through the clouds. The processing of the micro data is something different. And coming to the optical data also very difficult to get fully cloud-free data. 100% cloud-free data you will not get. So that we prepare value-added products, and we do the damage assessment using optical data. So the data processing for optical and microwave are somewhat different. So we analyze it and then integrate with the large-scale database, like at village level information. We integrate roads, railways, point of interest, relief and rescue shelters, and we prepare a spatial map, and we prepare a report. Okay, like what villages are affected, what districts are affected, in each district how much area is affected. So that type of maps we prepare and disseminate. So dissemination also directly we send to the MHA, Minister of Home Affairs, NDMA, State Disaster Management Authorities, directly through email immediately. And for other organizations, we disseminate through NDM Geo Portal and Bhuvan Geo Portal, so that anybody can visualize it and they can work on that using WMS services. So this is the complete chain of action in response phase, what we do. If you look at the floods and cyclones that we monitored in recent years, the major floods are expanding in India every year. In 2017, eight states were affected by the floods, and we prepared about 101 maps. In 2018, 10 states, 8 states to 10 states, and 2019, 14 states. So we thought that it was the worst year, last year itself, and we prepared about 255 flood maps. And this year much worse than the previous year. So in 2020, 15 states got affected by the floods. It is the worst year during last 2 decades, I can say. We prepared about 323 flood maps using 14 satellite missions data and disseminate to the users. And another interesting thing is, apart from this, other than 15 states got affected by the floods, interesting thing is states like Assam, Bihar, UP witnessed very prolonged floods, about 3 months. So which is very unusual. And another interesting thing is 6 states like Andhra Pradesh, Telangana, Maharashtra, Karnataka, Odisha, West Bengal, 6 states have witnessed floods 2 times. So it is a very rare phenomena that India has experienced in 2020. Here I am showing some flood products, what we have sent, and our complete turnaround time, whatever chain of action I have shown, from the download of satellite data to the preparing and data analysis, preparing maps and dissemination, the turnaround time is 3 to 6 hours, maximum is 6 hours. So the data product, the final product should reach the end users within 3 to 6 hours. That is the turnaround time we call it as. And 5 times we activated international charter in 2020. From this, you can understand the severity of the floods in India in 2020. These maps are used by state authorities in relief and rescue operations, damage assessment, and in disaster management activities in their states. Coming to the cyclone. The cyclone flood mapping monitoring is somewhat different from the riverine floods, because cyclone, you will not during cyclones you will not have much flooding. Riverine flooding won't be much, but the damage due to wind will be very severe. You will so it will create a lot of damage. Inundation may be less compared to the riverine floods. So in such cases, for assessing the damage, you need very high resolution data. Okay, optical data mainly, so that so immediately getting high resolution data immediately after event sometimes difficult. So we have to wait for 1 or 2 days. So we activate international charter. We get data of even sub-meter, 0.5 meter resolution data, so that you can see the buildings, rooftops. You can see the funny cyclone 2019, how rooftops have blown up, the buildings. In 2020, Amphan cyclone, how the inundation took place due to cyclone in West Bengal, you can see here. In Tamil Nadu, Nivar cyclone, you can see here the road damage due to the flooding. So for this, we need very high resolution optical data. So that's why flood mapping, riverine flood mapping is somewhat different from cyclone flood mapping. No, apart from this flood maps, we prepare some value-added products like the flood progression and recession, how flood is increasing and how flood is receding. Though this is very important in input for relief and rescue operations.
Sweet.
Can you please stop cross-talking? Then we prepare flood duration maps also. See, flood map will have the area of flooding in each village, how much area is affected by the flood. So duration is also another important input for damage assessment. Each area, for how many days the flood standing water is there. Okay, so that let us suppose the crop inundated by flood for 1 day, damage is different. For 5 days, the damage is different. So where we have a continuous data, we prepare duration map. Okay, and this year particularly we prepared some products like crop area affected due to floods. So for crop insurance purpose or for other damage assessment purpose. So in seasonal crop maps we prepared and flood damage assessment we made. I'm showing the example of Odisha this year. So this year about 5 states we did this activity, crop damage assessment. Here I'm showing the Assam. This is the flood map, 10th July to 16th August, cumulative flood map. And this is the normal Kharif rice area layer. This is the how much area, crop area is affected by the flood, you can see here. And coming to the mitigation phase. So having the advantage of historic satellite data, historic flood data, so we prepare state level flood hazard atlases. Okay, so using about 20 years data, we prepared flood hazard atlases for Assam, Bihar. We released earlier. Now, since the Bihar atlas was old, now this year we prepared updated flood hazard atlas for Bihar, and we are in the process of preparing flood hazard atlas for AP, West Bengal, UP also, and for other states where floods are not very frequent, we prepare aggregated flood maps. So how we prepare it? Yeah, so if you look at we prepare flood maps based on the events. Okay, so at the end of the year we prepare a cumulative flood map of that particular state. That means, for example, Mahanadi got flooded. Assume that Mahanadi got flooded in the month of July, and Brahmani Baitani got flooded in the month of August, and some other rivers got flooded in some other month. Okay. But at the end of the year, if the state administrator wants to know what is the total flooded area in Odisha, we prepare a cumulative flood map of that particular year. Like that, every year we prepare a cumulative flood maps of individual states. So we integrate all the cumulative flood layers of every year for the 20 years or more than 20 years, and we rank it very high to low. Okay, based on the frequency. And by integrating Central Water Commission data, Then by giving proper weightages, we prepare flood hazard atlas. What are the advantages of this atlas is, these are more important, this is the most important non-structural flood disaster risk reduction methods. You know that for flood reduction, dams, reservoirs, embankments are the structural methods, which is very expensive and time consuming. And non-structural methods are like a flood hazard donation mapping or flood forecasting. These are the non-structural methods. So this is one of the non-structural method. It is useful for controlling developmental activities. If I say that this area is high flood prone area, then the authorities can control the developmental activities so that the damage will be less. Useful in planning relief and rescue and health centers. In case of so if I know that the high flood prone areas, I should construct relief or health centers in those areas so that in case of any flood in future, they can take shelter at those locations. And during disasters also, for relief and rescue operations also, this is very important input. And in those areas, we can grow, we can recommend the farmers to grow the flood tolerant crops so that the damage to the agriculture will be less. It is important parameter in insurance also, because the insurance premiums, insurance claims in high flood risk is different and low flood risk is different, like our age. So insurance policy, if I take below 30 years, they take different premium and risk. Above 50, different premium risk. Similarly for agriculture area also. So important parameter in reservoir operations. This is the merits of flood hazard zonation. See, this is a methodology I explained already in brief. Okay, and there's at different flood layers. We prepare cumulative flood layer, annual layer, then integrate it, then prepare flood hazard atlas, and then we integrate high scale, large scale database like roads or villages and network, point of interest, etc. Okay, and we integrate Central Water Commission data also, means how many times a flood wave is coming in that particular year. And in a hierarchical process, we give some weightages, and finally we prepare flood hazard maps of a particular state. Here I am showing the flood hazard map of Orissa. We released in 2019 by Honorable Chief Minister of Odisha. It is prepared using 100 datasets. And coming to the Bihar Atlas, it is using about 274 satellite datasets. So in Assam also more than 250 satellite datasets we used. So like that, that is the advantage of having historic and large datasets. With that advantage, we are able to prepare the flood hazard atlas of various states. This is Assam flood hazard atlas, and you can see the district level flood hazard map also, and the statistics also, list of villages affected in various flood hazard classes. Each village, what is the area of high flood prone and low flood prone, you can see the classes, very low to very high. So based on this, other things can be planned. So we had to plan the relief and rescue centers. So first preference we should give in very high risk areas. Okay. Similarly, the insurance premiums in high risk areas less than somewhat different from very low risk areas. So like that. This is the mitigation phase. What you have seen now. Coming to some disturbance is coming. Okay, coming to the early warning phase, the response phase we discussed, and we discussed about mitigation phase. Now coming to the early warning phase. Now thing is, satellite remote sensing can provide you the flood extent after the event only. Okay, once after flooding only. So you sometimes the same day you get data, sometimes you may get data after 1 day. Okay, and depending upon the satellite pass over that area. So the damage mitigation may be less in such case. So for better relief and risk operations, for better damage risk reduction, if I give spatial flood early warning, okay, like a flood map like this, showing that this area is going to be affected by the flood next 24 hours, next 36 hours, or next 48 hours, like that, so that the people relief and rescue operations will be more effective, and the damage to the property and to the human life can be minimized to the great extent. So that is the advantage of spatial flood early warning. Now, you know that categories of flood forecasting techniques. We have short range forecast technique, medium range forecast technique, and long range forecast technique. In the short range forecast method, generally it is less than 40 hours, 12 to 40 hours. It is done using the gaze-to-gaze correlation technique. By knowing the flood event at upstream side, you know that flood routing techniques, then you can estimate the flood in the downstream side. Coming to the medium range forecast, so having the advantage of modeling techniques, I will use rainfall data as an input and meteorological data as an input, and I will estimate the runoff even to the upstream portions also, and route the flood to the downstream side, and give the forecast. So obviously the medium range forecast will have more lead time, 2 to 5 days, compared to the short range forecast. Then long range forecast. If somebody wants to give forecast much in advance, more than 5 days, then I have to use even rainfall forecast data also as an input. Okay, so long range forecast can be given using the satellite based rainfall forecast data. Okay, now the short range forecast, generally Central Water Commission, they give short range forecast using gaze to gaze correlation, and maybe more accurate. And the disadvantage in the short range forecast is, by knowing the upstream data, discharge data, they give forecast to the downstream discharge data. So in between catchment, they do rough estimation about the runoff. So sometimes if there is a heavy contribution of flood within the in between catchment, then the error will be more. And since the forecast lead time is less, the damage mitigation will be less. Medium range is somewhat better than short range forecast. Coming to the long range forecast, you will have more duration, more lead time. Okay, but the disadvantage is the accuracy of long range forecast is less, very less, because here you will be using rainfall forecast data also, which is not very much accurate. Okay, because the rainfall forecast, the first day forecast is, if it is 80% accurate, second day will be 70, third day will be 60 or 50%, and fourth day will be much less than that. Okay, but this will give an idea. Okay, it can be used in as an advisory. Maybe quantitative may be difficult. It can be used in an advisory, and it to understand whether the flood is progressing or receding. Okay, so like that, long range forecast is done. What are the new trends and technologies for flood early warning? Okay, and you have a lot of distributed modeling approaches, like lumped approach, semi-distributed, and fully distributed approaches. We have, apart from the Survey of India topo digital elevation models, we have satellite-based digital elevation models also at different resolutions. We have very high resolution digital terrain models using ALTM. Okay, availability of very advanced modeling softwares, and automatic weather stations data, rainfall-based satellite-based meteorological products, and the advantage of geospatial technology. Having the advantage of all these technologies, and this special flood early warning can be done more effectively and more accurately. So, if I look at, if I compare the conventional technique and modeling technique, then as I discussed in the previous slide, the range of forecast is short range here, medium range. Approach is gaze-to-gaze correlation, is distributed modeling technique. Accuracy is less, it is more. Spatial simulation, spatial flood simulation is not possible in this. In this, it is possible using very high resolution digital elevation model, so that I can simulate the flood in the spatial environment where what areas are going to be affected. And data requirements, of course, here it is minimum. Here more data is required, like topographic data and meteorological data. And for disaster risk reduction, the modeling technique is more effective. So what are the data requirements? We need some static data, we need some dynamic data. Static data mainly pertaining to the topography, like land use, soil covers, digital elevation model, etc. Dynamic data means we need historic meteorological data for model calibration and validation. We need real-time rainfall data for real-time operations and reservoir operations data. So we have developed spatial flood early warning systems for Godavari and Tapi rivers under National Hydrology Project. Here, I will show those two models, how we are doing. The broad methodology we developed earlier. Initially, we developed these models in a crash environment. Now we migrated to mic. So the broad methodology is this will have one is a flood forecast model. This will have a spatial inundation simulation model. So flood forecast model requires medium range, medium scale digital elevation model, land use, land cover, and historic hydrometeorological data, and model validation, model calibration. And coming to the spatial inundation simulations, the inputs are digital terrain model and the land use, land cover again. And digital terrain model is of very high resolution, maybe LTM DM. And the computed flood hydrograph in the first part one, that will be another input to this. Then again, model calibration and validation and spatial inundation simulation, and real-time operation using real-time rainfall data and rainfall forecast data and spatial flood alarming. This is the broad methodology of the spatial flood early warning system developed, what we developed for Godavari and Tapi rivers. Here I am showing the results of Godavari. We know that Godavari river is very big, over 3.12 lakh square kilometers. Okay, modeling such a big catchment is not a joke. Many reservoirs are there. We need a lot of reservoir operations data in real time also, because none of the reservoirs follow the operation rules, operation curves. Okay, so but here one interesting thing is during floods, many reservoirs will be filled up. Okay, after that only you will get flood. Okay, so with that assumption, we run wherever we have reservoir operation data, we use in the model. Wherever it is mainly major reservoirs, we use in the model, and small reservoirs we assume that it is filled, and it works out also well. And you can see the validation calibration in different years using historic data at different locations of Godavari Basin. The results are accuracy is about 90%, more than 87%, I can say. Similarly, Tapi River, at different locations, you can see observed and computed discharges. So the accuracy also very good for Tapi also. And coming to the inundation simulation modeling, so one is flood forecast like this. Okay, if you want to do spatial simulation, I need to develop hydrodynamic models. Maybe different techniques are there, 1D techniques and 2D techniques. We use 2D technique where river confluences are there, or where where the river meets the sea. Okay, because the flow will be two-dimensional. Otherwise, in the river, we can use one-dimensional flow, so that it will minimize the computational time. Particularly, we can run the complete basin in two-dimensional also, but thing is, computational time will be more in two-dimensional simulations. So thing is, in the Godavari, the floodplains are about 12,000 square kilometers. So it is very high. Okay, so that's why we adapted 1D and 2D modeling approach in the Godavari Basin. And I forgot to mention one more thing also in long range, medium range, and short range forecast modeling techniques. I mentioned that we have to use satellite based rainfall forecast data, WRF data, okay, for long range forecast. In case of flash floods, okay, where the lead time is very low, very less than a day. Okay, in such cases, satellite data, getting rainfall data, feeding to the model, running to the model, dissemination, that itself will take some 3 to 4 hours. So if the complete catchment lead time itself is about 16 hours or 18 hours, if you lose 3 to 4 hours, then the final lead time will be about 10 to 15 hours, which is not sufficient. In such cases, it is advised to use rainfall forecast data also, even though the accuracy is less, but it will give some idea. So This is about Godavari Basin. You can see here special flood simulation in Sabari River, particularly how the flood is increasing and how flood is receding. Okay, and background, the black color image, the gray and black image is a satellite image. I'm displaying in the background to show the accuracy of inundation simulation, particularly. Okay, so this model is calibrated thoroughly, and we are using operationally every year, this year also, and we provided this forecast results to AP State Disaster Management Authority during floods in Andhra Pradesh in 2020. You can see here, this is the Bhuvan Special Flood Early Warning Portal. Okay, and as I mentioned, the discharge estimation is more accurate than 85%, even sometimes 90% also. For flood forecast lead time error also less than 2 to 3 hours. Error in lead time means, let's suppose, if I say that a peak flood will come at 2 p.m. Okay, so the actual peak may come at 2 p.m. or plus or minus 2 to 3 hours. So like that. So the improved lead time, the lead time of this forecast is 50 hours. Okay, and those are the highlights of the special flood early warning models, web-enabled special flood early warning models that we developed for Godavari and Tapi rivers. This is a Godavari I'm showing here. So in the background, you will have a lot of spatial database, so that what village at what time is affected by the flood, how much area. And another advantage of the special flood early warning is you will get depth of flooding also. Okay, so which is also very important parameter in damage assessment. If the area is flooded, one depth of flooding is 1 feet, the damage is different. If the depth of flooding is 10 feet, the damage is different. Okay, so the depth of flooding is important parameter in DRR, and velocity of flooding also another important parameter in disaster management or disaster risk reduction strategies. And this is the Tapi flood inundation. Tapi flood inundation simulation modeling I'm showing here using ALTM and DTM. You can see, you can disseminate through Google Earth or Bhuvan. You can see the animations here, how flood is increasing from Ukai Dam to the, this is the Ukai Dam, from Ukai Dam to the coastal area, and how what is the depth of flooding. These parameters you can get. This is about the Tapi flood inundation simulation. Fortunately or unfortunately, there are no floods in 2020. I am showing the inundation simulation of 2006, when there was very severe floods in Tapi River. This is the 2006 flood I'm showing here. And apart from these things, we have a lot of international commitments. Okay, and as we receive satellite data from multiple space missions across the globe, we also provide data to others through international charter, through Sentinel Asia, and through international charter. We provide our Indian remote sensing data also. During last 4 years, we provided about 163 data sets to 23 countries through Sentinel Asia in addressing 80 disaster events. This year, we organized a 10th steering committee meeting also in Hyderabad, Sentinel Asia steering committee meeting. And through international charter also, we provide a lot of data. You can see the data what we provided during recent years, 17, 18, 19 through international charter. And to familiarize our flood products, okay, we organize different training programs under the capacity building program of DMSP, like DMS training program. Every year we organize, and I'm happy to inform you that from February 8th to 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, February 8th to 12, we are organizing 16th training program. Okay, already we have sent circular to the concerned state disaster management authorities. So considering the COVID conditions, this training program will be through online only this time. Otherwise, it is in-house training program. We take only 30 participants, first come first service basis, and first preference we give it to the state disaster management and central disaster management people only. Okay, sometimes we give some scope for the academicians also, those who are working in disaster management. If anybody is interested, they can mail it to me so that we can send it. We can send the course application brochure and application form. But I cannot ensure you that we will give the seats based on the availability only, because the demand is very high for this training program. And we organize a short duration training programs also on NDM, National Database for Emergency Management, to familiarize the use of NDM database for in near real time disaster management. Okay, so NDM, which is a large scale geospatial repository for disaster management. So my colleague will explain you how NDM is helping the disaster management authorities in near real time in next presentation. And as I mentioned, we disseminate through SMS directly first, and through NDM portal, and through Bhuvan portal also we disseminate. Okay, so these data sets are being used by state and central disaster management authorities and other state organizations like health departments. It is valuable input in relief and risk operations, controlling development activities, important input in crop insurance. Okay, finally, critical input in build back better in recovery, rehabilitation, and reconstruction, which is the Sendai framework slogan. Okay, so this is the space-based inputs are very critical inputs in DRR at the national level. So thank you very much. You can note down my email. If anybody interested, they can contact me at this mail ID. If any questions are there, we can discuss. I think we have another 5 minutes time.
Hello.
Hello.
Sir, can you throw some light on advantages and disadvantages of early forecasting system, like short range forecast?
So generally there are no disadvantages of early forecast system. Okay, if your forecast system is very well calibrated and validated, there is no disadvantage. But thing is, if the forecast system is not calibrated, validated thoroughly, then giving a false alarm, false forecast also equally dangerous. Okay, so because the state authorities, they will mobilize the, if you give the forecast that the flood is going to come at some 2 p.m. something, for a false forecast if you give, state will mobilize their machinery and equipment. Finally, if there is no flood, then it is also wasted of money. Okay, so your model should be calibrated, validated thoroughly. And the advantages I mentioned already. It is a best non-structural method for disaster risk reduction, because the structural methods like constructing dams, reservoirs, embankments, or flood levees, whatever it is, those are very expensive and time-consuming. Okay, like construction of an embankment or levees, flood levees, or anything. But this early warning is a best non-structural method, means the expenditure is less on this. You will have more time to give forecast. You can do very relief and rescue operations very effectively, much prior to the event. So please remember that disasters cannot be stopped completely, but the damage due to the disasters can be minimized. Okay, by different techniques. So in that, the flood early warning is one of the best non-structural method. Okay. Any other questions?
Hello. Hello, am I audible, sir?
Please.
So you
You're
said
audible,
that,
please.
yeah, you said
Please
that,
introduce yourself.
yeah, I am Dr. Prakash C. Das. I'm a faculty in XISS Ranchi.
Okay.
Sir, I have a small query. You said that you prepare many of the cumulative this flood disaster maps based on adding all the flood events that have come and the area affected by that.
Okay.
Simultaneously, you said that you do the rankings based on frequency. So how do you integrate both the area covered, cumulative area covered, as well as frequency to come out with this ranking methods? So can you elaborate on that a bit?
See, when we do the flood mapping, okay, let us suppose today there is a flood in Ranchi, okay, assume, okay, and the flooding is extended to some 1,000 square kilometers, assume, okay, but my satellite is covering only 200 square kilometers, fine. So it doesn't mean that only 200 square kilometers is flooded, but as per satellite data, 200 square kilometers is flooded, but actual flooding is 1,000 square kilometers. So what I have to do, I have to take satellite data continuously at different time steps, or I have to use different satellite data sets to cover complete flooding in Ranchi, to complete 1,000 square kilometers. Okay, so it may not be done in the first day itself, or maybe in 2-3 days I can complete it. Okay, so similarly Assam also, when there is a flood in Assam, it is very huge area. No satellite covers such a huge area. Okay, 20 million, 20 lakh hectares. No satellite covers that much area. Okay, so I take all flood images and integrate, prepare a cumulative map that shows the flooding of Assam in that particular year. Okay, all flood maps I'm integrating. Okay, that is cumulative flood map. Now coming to the flood frequency map or flood hazard map, see that is a cumulative flood map of particular 2020. That means it is a that shows that in 2020 what villages are affected by the flood. It won't speak about the severity of the flooding. But if I integrate 20 years data, if I prepare 20 years cumulative maps and integrate, okay, if I say that a particular pixel, a particular village is, when I integrate 20 years, some villages may have flood all the 20 years, or maybe 10 years or 15 years database. Okay, so that village is affected by the flooding 15 times in the last 20 years. Some villages are affected by the flooding maybe 10 times in the last 20 years, some maybe 5 times in the last 20 years. That indicates the intensity of the severity of the flooding within that state. So like that, we prepare a flood hazard or flood frequency maps.
Okay. Thank you so much, sir. So this can be done both at the pixel level as well as whatever vector files that we integrate.
It is a pixel level only.
Okay. Thank you so much, sir.
All pixel level only.
Thank you so much.
Durga Rao, sir.
Please.
Turn your camera on, sir. Then it will be okay. There are some few questions on chat box also, sir. Can you read, or shall I read for you?
1 minute. My camera is turned?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So there are few questions in chat box, sir. Please.
Let me read it.
Oh, there are so many.
Because I'm continuously delivering lecture, I could not read the message. I'm opening it. So in the meantime, anybody can ask any other question, live question.
Can I read for you, sir? One question from Anand.
I think it is taking time. Please.
I think what he is asking is
Please read. Hello.
Yes.
Please read the question.
So his question is like this, sir, while preparing flood hazard maps, how much extent you considered under the riverbed basin, especially in case of dynamic rivers like Kosi in Bihar?
See, thing is, in every flood map, in cumulative flood map, okay, we subtract the river portion in that particular year. Okay, so that is the actual flooding. Every year we prepare a pre-flood data. Okay, and in that particular annual flood layer, we subtract the river. Then we get the flooding in that particular year. So when we integrate some 15 or 20 years data, so the river portion will be removed, but the river portion will keep on shifting. If the in case of migration will be there in case of Kosi, so that will be taken care using the pre-flood data. Somebody asked, sir, can you please tell us where from we can collect the flood hazard atlas? Anushri Datta. These flood hazard atlas are available in Bowen portal. In disaster management dashboard, you can get it. Srinivas, any other questions?
There is one more question, sir. For flood range forecast, which satellite data is used? Optical and microwave?
See, the forecast, that is the issue. I mentioned very clearly. Response phase is different, forecast phase is different. In response phase only, we use satellite data for mapping the flood. In forecast phase, we don't use any satellite data. It is completely modeling technique. No flood map is prepared using any satellite data in forecast phase. Only rainfall based forecast products are satellite based rainfall forecast products are used. Like we have JUFS data, okay, and similarly our IMD WRF data. So we use satellite based rainfall forecast data in flood early warning studies, not the optical, not the microwave.
Anandji, please unmute yourself and ask your questions. You are, I think.
Am I audible?
Yes, yes.
I thought I am not able to unmute. Okay. So, for calculation of degree of vulnerability, when you calculate the degree of vulnerability, what are the parameters you consider? Like there are a lot of. If we look at the Japanese and other cases, they have like 21 parameters. So, like access to ease to access route or infrastructure robustness, something like that. So, what are the parameters we consider while we consider the degree of vulnerability?
See, this flood vulnerability is different. Okay, flood hazard is different. Okay,
Sir, but they are related, right?
it will be a threat of a disaster. Hazard means it will be a threat of a disaster. Okay, coming to the vulnerability it is susceptibility for any disaster. Like what is the disaster? What is the exposure? What is the resilience? Okay.
Agree, sir. Agree.
So vulnerability is different. So vulnerability, we have prepared vulnerability for flash floods. That is also available in Bowen. National level flood vulnerability index is computed. So for that, you need topographic data, you need metallurgical data. Okay. So what we have used in that, we have used under DS rainfall data. What is the rainfall frequency? What is the probable maximum precipitation? Okay. What is the frequency of high rainfall events more than 100 mm in during last 100 years? What is the runoff? What is the probable maximum runoff grids? And the topography? What are the slopes? What is the drainage density? Okay. So all these parameters are used and integrated calculating flood vulnerability index. Okay. So, for example, if I am saying that a particular bridge on a river is vulnerable for flooding, okay, then I have to consider the resilience of that particular bridge also. Okay. If two bridges, for example, on the same river, side by side are located. One is for going, another is coming. Assume. Okay. One bridge is very old, one bridge is very new. Okay. The flood is same for both the rivers. The discharge is same for both the rivers. Exposure is same for both the rivers. But the resilience of the new bridge is very high and old bridge is very less. That's why the old bridge is more vulnerable to the flooding than the new bridge. So we had to consider the status of the infrastructure also in computing the flood vulnerability of any area.
Agreed, sir. Agreed, sir. The vulnerability is the function of susceptibility and resilience. So agreed, sir.
Yes.
Sir, vulnerability of people. Have you considered vulnerability of people, like you mentioned for infrastructure? So do we have any study for checking the vulnerability?
When we do it national level, we cannot go at such a micro level.
Okay, agreed, sir. Agreed. Sir.
Okay.
Okay. Sir, do we have any study that you have done with TCPO or Town and Country Planning Organization for flood hazard zoning in terms of physical planning? Like, have we zoned out the land? No, sir.
No. Actually, this flood hazard atlases we prepare on behalf of the National Minister of Home Affairs. Okay. They asked us to prepare flood hazard atlas using satellite data. Okay. This speaks about hazard. Okay. So what infrastructure is below that hazard area, within that hazard area is different. Okay. Maybe villages will be there, urban infrastructure will be there. So we can integrate with any type of spatial database with that.
But we have not done any land use planning, land use zoning. Like this area is.
No, it can be used. See, the flood hazard atlas, what we prepare, we give it to the state government people for further analysis. Okay. So everything NRSC need not do. If you prepare a flood hazard map, okay, my map will be input for n number of people. Okay.
Exactly.
If agriculture person can use for its purpose, urban people can use for its purpose, forestry people can use their purpose. This is for n number of users.
So any reference studies, sir, where the urban planning or TCPO have used the data in any case?
I don't have any idea.
Thank you very much, sir.
Okay.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Dr. Durga Rao, sir. Okay.
Thank you, Srinivas Garu, for giving me this opportunity. Okay.